Life is a long highway and I'm just doing the best I can.
Welcome back to the Straight Line for Success. I'm honored to have Rick Sanford in here with me today. Rick, how's it going, my friend?
Well, it's always good, Dave. It's always good to see you. Always good to be back in Greenville.
Yeah, well, you have had a incredible journey, I would say, in success through sports, through the game of football. I mean, I understand from some of your friends that you weren't just a great football player. In fact, just pretty much any sport that you played, you were pretty good at. But tell me a little bit about, tell the listeners a little bit about your background and some of the things perhaps that got you going in life.
Okay. Well, I'm originally from Rock Hill, South Carolina, of course. And I think that I was the first football player out of South Carolina to be in the NFL. I think. I'm not positive of that, but really, what got me.
And you were the first rounder. We know that,
yes,
right?
Yes,
and you were drafted first round,
1979. Yeah, 1979 draft. Actually, it was a year before ESPN televised the draft.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, so I missed it by a year.
So tell me about that draft. It's 1979?
1979 draft, yep. And I had played in the Senior Bowl and also in the East-West Rhine game. At that time, the East-West Rhine game was in Palo Alto, right by Stanford University. And I played with, the all-stars of all-stars all across the country, and was being scouted. And I knew I was being scouted because I knew it was happening from my coach, Dale Evans, who was my defensive back coach at, of course, Dorman High School fame of two. Yeah. But Dale was my defensive back coach at South Carolina, and he had come to me my junior year, and he said, "Can I get a meeting with you in the turf room?" We had an underground room where we worked out sometime when the weather was bad. Yeah. And I said, "Yeah, sure." And so we just sat down. I remember one day, it was right about spring practice. We were getting ready to go out and do a spring practice that day, and he said to me, "Rick," he said, "I just want to know one thing." And he said, "Do you want to play professional football?" And I said, "Well, yeah, Coach, I'd love to play." I said, "I don't know what kind of chance I've got." And bear in mind, this is my junior year.
Okay.
Going into my senior year. I said, "I don't know what kind of chance I've got, but I would love to play," and me being the little small town guy from Rock Hill at the time, I said, "I'd love it. It'd be like a dream come true." And he said, "Well, I need to have this conversation with you," he says, "because right now I just want to tell you," and he said, "and I don't want your head to get big." I remember him telling me that, I don't want your head to get big. And he said, "And I know it won't, because I know the type of worker you are." He said, "But you're the number one rated defensive back in the country coming into your senior year." And I was blown away, David. I couldn't even believe it. It was like, wow, when you talk about a dream come true, man. I think I had the best spring practice that day I'd ever had in my life,
man,
but it did give me confidence. And I think that's what he really wanted to know from me. He said, I think he knew I wanted to play, but I think he needed to tell me that to instill confidence and to know that I could do it. And, unfortunately the next year it really happened, that I was a first round pick. Only defensive back that year picked in the first round of the 79 draft. So I'm very proud of that. And I'm very proud of the fact that, I came from a very, middle-class family, but I always had great parents, which, I attribute to a lot, really mostly my success.
And that was the New England Patriots drafted you.
Yes.
In the first round.
Yep. 25th pick.
A dream come true.
It really was a dream come true. I had made such great friends in the college all-star games, and I knew all the guys that were getting drafted that year, and I still friends with a lot of those guys still today. So it was really a dream come true, David. I was fortunate when I was a kid. I grew up playing all sports, like you said, and I've always been a proponent for that, Dave, for young kids. And I always said, As a matter of fact, really, when I was younger, I think baseball might have been my best sport as a child. And then as I grew up a little bit more, I think basketball became my best sport. And then as I got a little bit older, I think football might have been my best sport. So I was really fortunate. And then in the high school years, I ran track in the track and field, of course. In the spring. So played baseball in the summer and so I was year round doing something, with sports. And I think it really helped develop all skills, that are attributed to football. Yeah. You get all those skills in all these other sports. So that's why I've always encouraged parents, let your kids play all the sports.
And you played in the NFL for how many years?
7 years,
which is pretty amazing. 7 years.
Well, it's when you consider that the average now is about 2.25 years. It is pretty amazing. There are many times I think I actually probably could have played a little bit longer, but I went through a period toward the end of the 7 years. I'd always told my mother, I said, Mama, when this becomes a business to me, I want to get out. I just don't want to do this if it's, if it's taking the joy. And I think at that point in time in New England, my joy was kind of going after that many years. And fortunately enough, I got to play one more year, went to Seattle and played for Chuck Knox and really enjoyed that. And actually, Chuck asked me to, I remember my exit interview with him and of that year, and he said, Rick, we'd love to have you back if you want to, come back. And I'd already made up my mind. I was going to go to chiropractic school. And I told him, I said, well, Chuck, that's awfully kind of you and awfully nice, but I think the joy is kind of leaving the game for me. But I do remember the time that I walked off that field in Seattle the last time. I mean, just tears were just rolling down my eyes because I knew it was over, and from the time you're a child, I guess, and you work for something all your life, whether it had been in any sport, I think that was the realization I knew that, real life's about to start now.
Yeah. Well, and there's so many things that I want to talk to you about. I want to talk to you about your NFL career and some of the highlights and some of the memories, maybe your college career, some of those memories. But I also want to talk about, this is a success and leadership podcast. And so you've got a great story. And a lot of people, I was an NFL agent for 14 years and helped a lot of folks. And one thing that I noticed in not just football, but in life, musicians, singers, performers, when they have that opportunity like you did, where someone comes in and says, you know what, Rick, you're the best in the country at what you do. And, you're on stage this year. You got one more year to go and you can be in the NFL. You can achieve your dream.
Yes.
You said that made me feel great. And I went out there and did an incredible job, had a great practice. And obviously you did great. You continued it up. But a lot of people, they train wreck themselves because opportunity's coming. And rather than fail or take a chance to fail, they kind of do something subconsciously. I don't think it's consciously, but, I call it train wrecking yourself. Yeah. And, how did you avoid train wrecking yourself with that kind of hype as a junior in college?
Well, I think it goes down. I think you have to ground yourself too. I think you have to, yes, okay, you've been told that you're this, but nothing ever gets accomplished in life, I don't think, without hard work. And I knew that only made me work harder. I know that some guys may just sit on their laurels at that point and say, wow, I'm number one, I'm this, I'm all that. I didn't, David. I never, I just said, okay, if these scouts are looking at me like that, what more can I achieve? I was one of those guys that I was never satisfied to think that I've reached my potential, because I think people, they shortchange themselves. They think that they can't do something when really we all have it in us. We just have to find it.
That's good.
And, you just have to reach down and find it. And it's there. And I try to tell my friends, that are going through, difficult things and this, that, and the other. I said, life is difficult. Everything in life's difficult. But I said, the way you find yourself it's all there. You already have it within you, to achieve. And I think that to me, that is what defines an individual. That you can reach down inside yourself and never quit. When you quit, it's done. You're done. That's it. You quit. That's it. I'll never be what I can be. Okay. And so I think that was it for me, David, is I just felt like that I'm going to be the best, not just one of the best. I'm going to be the best at what I do.
That's an incredible attitude. I mean, where do you attribute getting that type of attitude?
Well, I just think it was work ethic. It was work ethic from a child. I always had a dream as a kid, because I can remember sitting on the couch with my dad watching, at that time, all you could ever watch was the old Washington Redskins. If you look down here, that's the only game you got. That or the Falcons occasionally. And I remember just sitting there and watching those players play and thinking, I'd love to do that one day, or I'd love to, be on that field. Just to be on that field would be just remarkable, and it just goes back. And I do remember one distinct time, David, and I grew up a South Carolina fan because my family were South Carolina fans.
Yep.
If I'd have been, grown up in a Clemson household, I'd have probably gone to Clemson.
Well,
I remember one time my father taking me to a game at South Carolina, and I was in the 5th grade, and I was sitting up in the end zone with him. And I'll never forget this as long as I live. It's just one of those things that you can always recall in your lifetime. And I remember my dad could sense my excitement. I know South Carolina was playing Wake Forest, and at that time Wake Forest had a great running back, which a lot of people may know by a great movie, and his name was Brian Piccolo.
Oh yeah.
And South Carolina had a great running back too, Warren Muir. So it was like a game with the running backs against running backs, and I just never forget looking up at my dad, and I said, "Dad," I said, "I'm going to play on that field one day." And he just looked at me, and I know he just smiled at me, and I'll never forget him saying, he said, "I know you will, son." And then, it was like one of those moments that, I'm sure he thought about it as, well, I don't know if it's really going to happen, but as long as he believes it, it's good,
But he instilled that belief.
Well, he did. And I think he instilled the belief. And then, the one other thing that I think I was extremely fortunate is I had great coaching growing up, and people don't realize, what type of mentor you can be, especially if you've been an athlete, to younger people. And I think, they have a tendency, younger people now have a tendency to look up to those guys who have already accomplished what their goal was. Well, now it's those young people's goal.
Yeah.
So it's time to give back. And that to me is important, to see that young people can find themselves, because they have it.
Yep.
They all have it. I mean, everybody has it. Everybody has some kind of talent in their life. And you just have to find it. And it may be in playing a musical instrument. It may be playing football. It may be, being in an orchestra, whatever. But you have it. And that's what I think people need to realize, is that it's there. It's there. Yeah. You can do it. You can achieve. And I always went by this motto, David, and if it is to be, it's up to me. And that was my motto. I mean, I remember as a kid thinking, if it's to be, it's going to be me. I can do it, but it's going to be on me. And I was fortunate. I had a great, two really great, I won't say football coaches, which is interesting because that was my basketball coach in high school, and also my track coach. They were tremendous coaches. Bob Jenkins, was in the Track Hall of Fame. As a matter of fact, we won state championships when I was at Northwestern High School. I think we won it 3 years in a row.
What was your track? What?
I ran the quarter mile.
Okay.
And I also ran all the relays.
Okay.
And actually, we still hold a state record in the 440-yard relay because there's no 440 yards anymore. But we actually set that record. We ran 41.4 at the state meet in the rain.
Wow.
Which was, in a pouring rain, which was amazing. When it was probably one of the best performances by any relay team in high school history. When you think about, the things that were taking place with all that rain pouring down and all that. But I'm very proud of Coach Jenkins. Actually, the state track meet is now named the Bob Jenkins State Meet.
And that was your coach.
And that was my coach in high school. He was a tremendous track and field coach, but he was also a tremendous leader. And that was where, he was one, I think that one of the main things that he would always tell all of us, it didn't matter whether you were the last guy or the first guy. His thing was always, he says, did you get your PR today? And your PR is your personal record, you know? Well, if you didn't, he would say, you know, you got to strive harder. You got to do this. But he did it in such a fatherly way, you know? And then I had the opposite ends of the spectrum with Lindbergh Moody, who was my basketball coach. And Lindbergh, he coached me through Northwestern, but he actually helped me when I was younger in the years that were formative. I had gone to the Citadel basketball camp as a seventh grader because they knew that, well, he's going to be coming up through the ranks. He's pretty good. So, you know, we'll, you know, send him to the Citadel basketball. And I'd gone with the high school kids to the basketball camp and played. And it was interesting there. It was one of the high school kids told me at an event not long ago, he's my brother's age, and he was there at the thing. He said, you know, it was great when we were at that Citadel basketball camp. He said, because here we are all out there, high school kids, and you see all these scouts over here. They're looking at the seventh grader over there, and they're talking about him, you know. So it was a lot of fun. But Lindbergh was a tremendous leader. He also, I think, he led in a really tough way. He kind of toughened me up. I'll just put it that way, you know, because he would not tolerate mistakes. You know, he was just one of those guys. You were either going to accept it. And there were times he put me on the bench and I didn't come off that bench, you know, when I was younger. Now, as I got older, I knew I can't make that mistake.
Yeah.
I can't do that anymore. Well, he taught me that. And I think that, by his leadership, and he was tough.
So he set the bar higher than you would have set the bar for yourself.
And that's what he did. And that's exactly what he did. And he's one of those that, I think in life, I think he's the one that made me realize that we all have something in us. You can reach down farther than you think you can go, you know, to achieve what you want to achieve. You know, it's really about want to. I mean, if you want something bad enough, you'll go get it. You know, you'll go get it. And if you don't really want it that bad, then you're probably not going to, you know, put the effort in. But it's all about effort, hard work, you know, and fortunately, if you have a little talent to go along with it, it does help.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. Well, I mean, I've got mentors that tell me, they're like, Wyatt, if it's important to you, you'll make it happen. If it's not, you'll make excuses.
Yeah, that's right. I mean, that's a perfect way to put it. And again, I just go back to, you know, if I'm going to achieve something, I mean, it's up to me to achieve it. I can't, you know, nobody is going to make me do anything. I can't do it. You know, somebody can be your boss or they can tell you to do something, but, you know, whether you do it or not is really up to you.
Yeah. Well, and that's leadership, self-leadership. That's some great stuff. I love the attitude. So let's talk about a little bit of some fun memories that you have playing the college game. You're playing for University of South Carolina. Who was the head coach at the time?
That was Jim Carlin.
Okay.
Jim was my head coach, and you know, Jim could be gruff at times, to particularly with the media, but he was a tremendous person to me.
Yeah.
And he was very, you know, he was like a second father figure. And one of the reasons I wasn't really set to go to South Carolina until he came on board. I mean, you know, they were going through a change from Paul Dietzel over to Jim Carlin. And, I didn't know anything about Jim Carlin when he came in, but he made the rounds. He, came to see me. He came to see my good friend Steve Fuller, who ended up at Clemson.
Oh, yeah.
He was a tremendous quarterback. And of course went on and played pro ball himself. And I think he went to see another tight end that ended up going to Georgia, Mark Hodge, out of Spartanburg, who had played with Steve. And then there was a kid down in the lower state. And, well, two of them went to Georgia. One went to Clemson, and I went to South Carolina. And you know, Jim came in and he said, I'm making the rounds to all you top players. And he said, you know, I would love to have the opportunity. But one of the things I think that made the difference to him was he promised my parents, he said, I will tell you this. He said, I will be like a second father to your son while he's there. And he was. I mean, honestly, he held up that end of the bargain. And even years later, he was like a second father to me. He always kept in touch with me. Even after I'd left South Carolina, he kept in touch with me through my pro years. And he could tell if there was something bothering me or something, he would call me and say, I need to have a conversation, what's going on? Tell me what's happening, So, and that was sometimes I was going through some, contract issues, which, that's a normal thing. That as an agent, that's a thing with the player, when you don't feel like you're valued enough or whatever. But Jim was just great about, staying in touch and those type things.
So as college coach, and you're talking about in the NFL.
Yes.
So what, do you have some memories that stick out of playing the game, college or pro?
Well, I have tons of memories. I remember, one time when we were, all my memories aren't great. Okay.
Yeah, right.
I can tell you that. I mean, we lost to Clemson 3 years when I was there, the 4. And not that really defines, a player or anything like that. But, my freshman year, I thought, wow, we're going to beat this team every year. We beat them like 56-20 at home, which we never punted. We never, it was amazing. I had the first interception of my career that day.
Nice.
And, we had really dominated them. And I just remember, I remember my good friends from Clemson, Steve and the Bostic boys who've become very good friends, and Joe and Jeff both. I remember all of them saying, and Jim Stuckey, another one, saying, we were in the locker room and Danny Ford came in and, Danny said, I will tell you as long as I live, this SHIT ain't never going to happen again, and Danny ended up being the head coach and, the next year, after I think that my junior and senior year, Danny had come on and been the head coach. But, we went up to Clemson the following year, I remember, and we were heavily favored to win the game. And I'll never forget, we were out there warming up and it was a gray day, kind of like it is outside today, and no sunshine, no nothing. And we came out to warm up and I looked over at Coach Evans and there's nobody on the other end of the field. And I said, Coach, where are they? I mean, are they going to warm up? He said, I have no idea. I don't know what's going on. But actually, they were over there practicing on their practice fields. I mean, they were actually hitting before the game. There was no warm up to them. And it was really a great ploy on their part because they were ready to go and they took off from the very get go. And that was a game we were set to go to the Liberty Bowl if we won that game. So they knocked us out of that bowl game. But, so those are, they're not all great memories. I had a lot of great memories. I mean, there were multiple games. I intercepted 2 passes and,
tell us about one of those.
Well, the Furman game, my senior year. Excuse me, it was my senior year. Actually, was covering my old high school teammate, Jimmy Kaiser.
How about that?
And Jimmy had ended up playing quarterback at Furman a good bit, but he also played wide receiver. And so that day they had, that year we opened up with them, and I had covered Jimmy the whole game, had a couple interceptions, and it was just really strange, when you cover a guy that you kind of grew up with.
Yeah,
we just kind of grew up as kids together, and here we are out there on a stage and 60,000 people or whatever. So it was kind of odd, but, and also it was just odd, playing my friend Steve all those years, because we'd become good friends during track and field, competing against each other. And Steve was a quarter miler too, like me.
Okay.
And so we competed against each other back and forth, quite a good bit, but it was always in a friendly manner.
Well, let's talk about that because I think that's one thing that sports does help you as a competitor. If you really are some people, it sounds like you may be amongst these. You got friends and it's you don't want to lose, but you don't necessarily want to beat your friend. But I mean, you obviously were able to overcome that.
Well, I think you have to understand
compete.
It's all in competition.
Yeah.
It's all in, the good of trying to reach down and do the best you can do for you.
Right.
It's particularly, football's a strange game though, Dave. It's really one of the games that is really, I've always called it the ultimate team game. And that's what a lot of guys don't understand. I think that they get out there and they think, well, I'm going to do this and I'm going to be this and I'm going to be that. And I said, if I was coaching that kid, I would be saying, well, no, it's we. We are going to do that. And if we do that, believe me, with the talent that you have, you will get recognition. You know? I think sometimes that gets, put to the back, and the team kind of gets put behind the individual. And that's where a lot of guys, I think, kind of fail, because they think, I can do this on my own. Well, not in football, you can't. Right. I can tell you that if every guy's not, operating on every down on which they should be operating on, which is, you may have to beat this guy across from you because it is a one-on-one game, yet it's built within a team concept.
That's a great point you make. I mean, teamwork, that you can have a basketball team where one guy really is, so dominant that he takes over. I think a lot of sports are like that, but football, you really can't.
You really can't. And, you can, as good as Tom Brady was, and as good as Patrick Mahomes is, right. I'm sure those guys will be the first to tell you, I can throw it, but I can't catch it. Right. So I got to have people out there that are operating on, on the same wavelength and on the same mindset that I'm operating on. And I think a lot of that, comes with, being successful and just reaching down inside yourself and understanding that if this team is successful, then I'm going to be successful.
Yeah, that's great. Now talk about a little bit about being in the NFL. I mean, I wanted to was that something that immediately you took to? Did it take time for you to identify in that role?
Well, I think everything, and I'm glad that's a great question, because I think when you move from high school to college, the speed gets a little bit faster, and the people get a little bit bigger. But then when you move from college to pro football, the speed gets a lot faster and the people get a lot bigger. So, it took me, I've gone back in my mind through the years. And of course, growing up in the South here in South Carolina, you get drafted to New England. It's extremely cold from about September on through up there, through the season. So it took me it really took me a year to acclimate, just to the weather, was the main thing. And then I think in terms of the football, and catching up to speed with, how I think that I felt like I'm comfortable, it took me probably about 10 games. And that was, really it would have been 14 games, because at that time we played 4 preseason games too. Mm-hmm. And as a rookie, I was playing a lot in the preseason. And I think it was about 10 games or so. And then I felt really comfortable. I felt like I can compete with these guys. And it wasn't I can compete with these guys, I can compete with these men, because that's what they were. I was a boy. I'm 21, 22 years old, and you look across from me and you're lining up against Terry Bradshaw over there, or Lynn Swan, or, it's crazy as it is. You just look at them like, okay, just another guy, and they're not, but right. They are. One of the most vivid memories I had was when I was a rookie and we opened up with the Steelers, on a Monday night game in New England. And I'll never forget, it's that mean, tough Jack Lambert and the old Steelers defense. And I was on punt team. And so I lined up, and I was an end on the punt team. So I stepped back in and I looked across from me, after I'd looked down just to make sure I was lined up correctly. And I come back in and I look up, and Jack Lambert is right across from me, on my first game wow. in pro football. And I'm thinking, this is one of the meanest guys in the league, and he had no teeth in, he had it was crazy. And I looked over at him and thankfully he didn't try to, really kill me on the play. He just kind of ran along with me, which was great, but, it was a different experience because I was now on the same field and really on the same level, with guys that I'd grown up watching.
As big as it gets.
Big as it gets. And I thought, well, it doesn't get any better than that either. You got Jack Lambert over there right across from me. How many people get to line up right by Jack, but it was playing against guys like Walter Payton and Franco Harris, and it was almost surreal, my rookie year. And then after that, you kind of get over it, So it doesn't really matter who they are, what they are, you just know you got to line up and play.
They're all like, man, I got Rick Sanford over here.
That's right. I don't know. They probably didn't say that, David, but I was saying that about them. But you're a little bit starstruck when you get up there. I think. I don't care who you are, and what you think you are. Even if you're a first-round draft pick or a fifth-round draft pick, doesn't really matter. You're on the field, and you got to put it all behind you.
What did you think about like the New England fan base? What was that like getting with those guys?
They were great fans. They really were great fans, and I was honored my fifth year up there that they give an award. They have a award, 1776 they call it, fan club.
Okay.
And they give an award to the most unsung player on the team, and they gave that award to me, and I was so honored. I was in the league at that point about 5 years. That was 1983 season, and I'd had 7 interceptions that year and was a Pro Bowler and all that. But the most important thing was to be recognized by the fans. Not necessarily your peers and all, because I felt like I had the recognition by the coaches and that type of thing. But they recognized, hey, that was a guy that, he did a lot of things for us this year. That didn't get a lot of recognition for us, but that was a really extremely great award.
That is a great award. Now, you just mentioned something that I've heard others talk about, being Pro Bowlers. Now, where was the Pro Bowl when you were in it?
It was in '83. I was actually an alternate.
Okay.
They put me as an alternate that year, but they call you a Pro Bowler.
Well, that's huge. I mean, was that something that you were aiming for, the Pro Bowl?
No.
Did you want to be a Pro Bowler? Was that part of your, did that cross your spectrum as a player? Was like, oh, I'd like to be a Pro Bowl?
I think every player wants to achieve the highest level, but it wasn't my end game. I just wanted to be recognized as a good team player, and I knew if I'm a good team player, the recognition will come. I was, and it did. I mean, that year, I got a lot of recognition that year, and they called me unsung, but I was fortunate. I got a lot of recognition from people, but I think that's the thing with football, is you have to recognize that for you to be able to attain your best, you have to have all these other guys be good with you. They have to be good with you, not personally. I'm talking about they have to be within themselves. They have to play up to their ability. And, you see guys sometimes that get some recognition on very bad teams, but it's few and far between, versus the guys that are on really, really good teams.
Yeah. And that part of what we talk about is, bringing out the best, not only in yourself, but in others. Mm-hmm. And I know that you made the transition to being a chiropractor and had a successful chiropractic career. Mm-hmm. A lot of football players and professional athletes have a hard time making that transition. What was the key for you, and what brought you that way?
Well, it was a football acumen, I think. It was, and I think the being successful and wanting to do something. And that was basically it for me. I mean, 27 years of that was, I recognized, first of all, I'm going to hire good people. And the people that I hire are going to be a reflection of me, because, if you're going to be successful in any realm of life, I think you have to have good people around you. And I did. And I was very, very fortunate, to not have to, move people a lot, but I was fortunate. And I tried to look for people that, shared they'd have to totally be like me, but I just wanted them to share my philosophy. Look, the patient comes first.
Yeah.
The patient's always right. That kind of thing, David, that, even when you knew they weren't, make them think they are, So it was good, and I just mean that in the realm that, I always thought that, you're in a service industry that you have to serve, and, that there's times when that, the patient may not be right all the time, but, my philosophy is that, I could always, or I felt like I could always negotiate with them some type of solution.
Yeah.
If there was a problem, we can fix it, that kind of thing. I think some people get into I'm always right, and you might be right, but there's times when you don't need to recognize that you're right all the time. Yeah.
That's good. Like sometimes being right doesn't necessarily behoove you.
Well,
to
it
try to
hurts
prove
you anytime, I think, and you may know that you're right deep down, but there has to be some type of give and take.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And I don't think we have enough of that today. I think that, some people are just so dead set. I'm going to do this. I'm going to do that. I'm not going to listen to what that person has to say. I'm going to do it my way. And I think that's, it's costly. I think it's costly to the individual and whatever they're trying to achieve.
Well, again, I appreciate you being with us today and talking about success. You've had success at so many levels: high school, college, NFL, as a chiropractor, professional service industry. What is it today? How do you define success today? And how do you stay motivated?
Gosh, that is so, that's an open-ended question. I think success to me is an individual thing. It's not necessarily, you have to say, did you achieve everything you wanted? Is it out there for you to achieve? Yes, it's out there. Now, did I do it is the other thing. And this goes back to our initial conversation here today. Yeah. There is so many people out there that are hungry for probably something that you have deep inside you, that would love to be able to do the things that you can do. But they just need some type of motivation, Well,
and again, I'm talking about your motivation, and I think I hear you talking about purpose, and it seems like you've had purpose throughout your life, and you're even finding purpose today. And talk about a little bit about if I'm someone who has this sort of feels like a drive to be great at something, or I want that, how do I find it? How do you find it? How are you looking for it today?
Well, I look down within myself. It all comes back to me. I mean, I don't look on the outside world. I mean, there's so much, you get so many distractions out there. You see so many people that want to bring you down out there. And that's
bunch of haters.
It is. There's a lot of people that hate in this world nowadays. And it's sad because I think that, I just try to keep my focus. Number one, my focus is me. My focus is how I can respond.
Yep.
My response is important. It's not, I'm trying not to get drawn into that outside world.
Yeah.
It's very difficult. That is one of the things that, with social media, I think that's been one of the downfalls of this country, quite honestly. And it's because, you got people arguing here, you got people arguing there, and, hey, why can't we all just meet in the middle, and, be good people? If you're a good person, I really feel like your purpose will come out, and I think that I've always just pulled it out of me somehow, David. I think I just have the work ethic and the thought that I'm not going to be denied. I'm just not going to be denied. If I really, truly want something, I can achieve it.
You can achieve it. Well, and again, Rick Sanford, today in your life with your family, your marriage, your community. I know you've been extremely supportive of the South Carolina Football Hall of Fame, and I've seen you do a lot of things for other people. I mean, how is it that you mentioned earlier, you said, well, when I was hiring people for my job, I had certain what I call core principles, or what I heard is sort of a core principle. What are those core principles that drive you in your life today?
Well, is the thought of being successful. Okay. I think that you have to have an end game.
Yep.
You have to have a goal out there. You have to say, I'm going to set that goal. I'm going to achieve that goal, and I'm going to put it out there, and I'm always going to manifest it daily.
Yeah.
That's what most people don't understand too. I think you have to think and you have to manifest things happening in your life. You know, I just remember thinking as a young boy that I'm going to be a professional in some sport.
Yeah.
You know, some sport. I don't know what it's going to be, but I'm going to achieve that. And I didn't, you know, hey, it might have been a young boy's dream, but it was a dream. And it was something that I saw early on that I can achieve it, but I have to want it. I have to focus on it. I have to work for it. And I will not be denied. You know, you have to have that mentality where I will never quit.
Man.
Never quit. You know, my wife and I talk about that all the time. We look at people out there and, you know, she always looks at me sometimes. She said, you know, the thing I really love about you. And I said, well, I hope there's a lot. I don't know if there is, but she said, oh yeah, there's plenty. But she said, I love this about you. She said, because you have that drive and that you're not a quitter. And that's what she is. She's not a quitter. She has that drive too. And both of us together, we just make a good team because we don't think about a loss. We think about a victory, you know, and the victory lies in, you know, I've lost. Don't get me wrong. I mean, I've lost many times in my life. I remember when I was we were playing the Bears in Chicago, and I ran touchdown, 99 yards from an interception back against the Bears.
Wow.
And I remember getting to the end zone thinking, man, that was a long way. But we lost the game. So it wasn't a complete victory to me.
Yeah.
You know, I just remember that I learned more. You learn more losing than you do winning. You know, it's easy to win. And I don't mean easy, but it's easier to win. But you learn more lessons in losing because you go back and you analyze. You have a tendency to analyze a lot more when you lose something. And, you know, I've analyzed every loss I've ever had in my life, David. I've analyzed it, and I've learned from every single loss what happened, how it happened.
I tell you, it's incredible. I sit here and listen to you, and I hear so many different things that people have identified over the years as the successful attitude or mindset, or you know, the losses. I certainly resonate with that. My losses. You know, drives you crazy. You know, the losses. Talk about, you know, and you've had a lot of success. You've had some setbacks, which, you know, the straight line to success is not always. A lot of people say there is no straight line to success. Coach Jeffries recognizes that when you look back, it is a straight line. He says when you look back, it is a straight line, and that's kind of what I think a straight line oftentimes has been defined as. You know, the shortest point between 2 points, which so hopefully what the viewers are getting here is a way to pick up something from you that can help them straighten that line out. But if you were going to go back and say, you know, some piece of advice to your younger self, you know, say, you know, young Rick, 25 years old, or sometime around, you know, your youth, maybe even younger than that. But what would you tell yourself?
Well, I mean, we always have regrets in life. I think I don't think it matters. You went on and became an attorney. I don't know if you wanted to be an attorney all your life. You know, my dream as a kid, I guess if you look back on younger Rick, it was going to be, I'm going to go play some professional sport, and then I'm going to go into coaching. You know, and I never did, and I somewhat have that regret.
Okay,
because I felt like I can identify with young people, and I can identify with what they're going through in terms of particularly kids that are achievers. Yeah. You know, because I've been there. Yeah. I know what you're thinking. I know how you're thinking. But I even think that I could have, even to the kids that weren't as talented, you know, I think I could have added a lot to their life in that, look, I did this, but I did this because,
Yeah.
and whatever, you just need to go become the best version of you. Don't worry about all the, the outside. You just go be you.
Yeah.
That's the main thing, I think. And I think that gets lost with kids sometime. And to me, that's very, very important because, like I said, everybody has something, David, that they're going to be an achiever at. I mean, or they can be,
I agree.
and it really, you have to find that. I mean, nobody can find it for you. Now, people can help bring it out.
Yeah.
And I think I would have been like a liaison, I'm just a liaison for you, son, or I can't do it for you, but, I can help you find it, that kind of thing.
Well, that's incredible. And I like do the best you can do. You just got to be the best you can be. And that's great.
I don't think you can worry about everybody else. You can be encouraging, and particularly in a game of football, you better be encouraging, because you want everybody doing their best, because, it's not an individual game. It's just not. And, you can learn a lot about football, and I mean, life through football. And, it's the closest game I've ever come to. And I've played all those sports, but it's the closest game I've ever come to the game of life.
Yeah. No, I think that's what it's all about. And we really appreciate you being here. I want to have you back.
Absolutely.
And thank you so much for your time.
Absolutely, David. Thank you. Thank you. Enjoyed it.
Me too.
Thank you for listening to The Straight Line to Success. Copyright 2026 Wyatt Sports and Entertainment, LLC. All rights reserved. Visit www.tslts.com and join the TSLTS Insider for exclusive content and updates.
Here we go. Life is a long highway and we're doing the best we can. Everybody do your best. Come on, come on. Do your best. Do your best. The best you can.